All right. All right. Good evening, everybody. This is our fourth webinar. We're going to have Chief Joe Pronesti from Elyria Fire Department. I'll have Chief Pronesti do a introduction of himself. I met Chief Pronesti through some class up at Bowling Green State Fire School. He's taught up there for a few years, and then he's done some classes locally around our area in Lima, down in Putnam County. And so tonight's class is Lost in the Fog of the Fireground. I think it's going to be a really good class about no matter how good of a fire scene you're on, there's always chaos, and chaos creates confusion and just some narrow-mindedness thinking. And Chief Pronesti is going to have some good examples and some ideas to overcome those situations. So, Chief, I'm going to give you the rest of the evening, so it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks for everybody on a beautiful Monday night, giving me a little bit of your time. I really appreciate it. If you've been to my classes at Bowling Green or in Lima, this is or at FDIC, some of this is going to be things you've seen before, but it's a good refresher. And I ask that if you have that, again, maybe you go back to some of the line of duty deaths that I speak about and share them with your department. I'm all about sharing. And the biggest reason behind this as we move forward is a very close call that I had, it's been now 11 years or 10 and a half years where I almost severely injured or killed some firemen under my command. And so size up in command for the small department, avoiding the fog of the Fireground. And this is a little bit of how you can get lost in the fog. Uh-oh. Oops. Now she ended up being okay, but is a great example of someone who was on her phone and got caught in a bad situation. And that we can kind of relate to our situation. Now here, I'll set this up a little bit for you. This is, again, kind of like what we're going to be discussing of being lost in a fog. This fire occurred in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Small department on scene first. You'll see just an engine company. The fire is in a kind of like a highway gas station, supermarket kind of place. And I'm sure many of you watching this will say, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen. Well, put yourself in these firefighters' shoes, and it's very easy to understand how they got lost in the fog.
If not, I can just run home. The store is gone. The store is absolutely gone. Burger King is pretty much closed too. It's a hardcore flame. So, well, if you do run by my house and grab one of the spare batteries by my computer, or there might even be one plugged in. Where they are. And then call me when you get here. Okay, right, bye. Whoa! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Now pause it so you guys don't hear the guy in slow motion. But a great example. And again, it's yes. Could you call this class situational awareness? Yes and no. That yes, it is situational awareness, and there are some great instructors out there that do a wonderful job. But these are specific incidents that after my close call, I started to think about some ways that we can get lost in the fog on the Fireground. Everybody here, this is a quote that I use in every class, and it really hits home. There is the leader of the head of the state of Illinois fire school, state fire school. It is a wonderful program, a well-run academy, and its leader is run by a retired Marine general. And I was at a class many years ago where he was teaching. I believe his name is Royal Mortensen. And he said that in the military, that soldiers are taught they have to feed their 3,000-year mind, 3,000. But in the fire service, it's only 300. And I sat there and I thought, wait a minute, what is this guy trying to say? And it's quite simple, that in the military, a leader has 3,000 years of wars to study, analyze, and make themselves and those that they lead better. We only have 300 years. Many of you watching this are obviously into the job, and I'm going to give you lots of little things nuggets to further research, and then also, my contact information to where if you're interested in something that I can give you even further information. But those 300 years are going to be close calls and line of duty deaths that occur in every one of our cities and the types of buildings that we all have. It's just that it touched another city, but the buildings are all the same. So start feeding your 300-year mind. Get yourself into the books and read and study. And if you just spent 1 hour every day, 1 hour, everybody has an iPad, a phone. If you just focused 1 hour on the job, just think of how much better you would be. How do we become lost in that fog? Well, we fail to prepare ourselves. We talked about how to better prepare ourselves. A lack of focus. Failure to prepare crews. Do your crews know how or what information to share on the Fireground? Regardless, I don't care if you're paid, volunteer, part-time, I don't care. We all face the same enemy, but we all need to focus, and we all need to prepare ourselves though. And we sometimes get away from that. I think we get too carried away with so many things. I mean, right now, hell, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so it's easy that, we focus on, the EMS side and making sure that our members wear, the masks and be lost in that kind of atmosphere. And well, no, we can't train because we can't be together. Find other ways like this. Acknowledging information, especially critical information. We'll talk about that and my thoughts on radio procedures and things that I have learned and what I have failed at, and complacency. I'll back up a little bit more about myself. I'm with the City of Elyria, Ohio Fire Department. I apologize, I failed to give you a little quick bio. Elyria is Northern Ohio, Lorain County. It's about 55,000 people. My fire department is full-time, 65 members. We run a minimum staffing of 14, 3 firehouses, 3 engines, a truck, a true truck, no tank, no pump, and a shift commander. That is my position. I'm an assistant chief. I run a shift, and I start my 32nd year.
You come inside, you can't go back. Whatever, we were coming in.
I started my 32nd year in July.
Following you and then start following me after.
So here's the crux of what we're to talk about today. Common errors of the fog. You're going to see the video of the fire where I almost killed the firefighters under my command. Due to time, we're not going to see the whole video. Some of it's on YouTube if you search it out. But after that experience, I started to think, okay, so how do we become lost? And it's really quite simple, in my opinion. You know, failure to select the proper line or stretching properly, not listening to dispatch or what your companies are saying. And that doesn't mean you ignore them. It's, are you getting good information, or are you asking for good information, and are you doing it correctly? No 360. You know, I don't want to hear that everybody, oh, 360, you got 360. Yeah, we all know we got to do 360. But what if there's circumstances that prohibit you from doing that, and little trip ups in that fog can reach out and get you on that? Reading smoke, reading the building, collapse zone discipline. You can see them all here. Survivability profile, we'll definitely talk about that. Failure to anticipate staffing needs. I call it the bells. What I mean by that is if you are in a command position or even a company officer and your bell starts ringing, it's time to start reevaluating when, you know, let's go. If you're an older member that's been on a while, you'll probably all know, or you've probably done it yourselves, where your bells ring and you're like, we know where the stairs are. Let's just finish this, and you know, we're okay. We can see. Well, if you have that attitude in a old downtown type building that's deep, and you're operating, and all the house fires you've been to, it's been okay, and you start working a little longer on that Main Street building, and you suddenly find yourself in a predicament. So failure to anticipate the bells, and then as far as command, the staffing needs of what you need on scene as far as staffing when those bells start to ring. Mayday lack of preparation and practice. Excuse me. It's not just the RIT bag. Listen, if you're a company officer watching this, or a firefighter who, okay, it's tomorrow, it's supposed to be 95 degrees. I work tomorrow, and I can pretty much tell you in the city of Elyria Fire Department, our guys are probably not going to go out and do hydrants. And so hopefully we're going to do some other things. But picture that kind of day in your department where it's 95 degrees, and you're like, you know what, we're not going to go out. So what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. Let's get the RIT bag out, the magical RIT bag. Oh, okay, well, let's play with the RIT bag. And you as a command officer or a company officer who might have to you know, run a Mayday or be involved in one, if you haven't, and you just go about your paperwork, or you look busy in your office while the guys are touching the RIT bag, that's not preparing yourself. You have to prepare yourself as a company officer, as a command officer, and not just that RIT bag. And we'll talk about that. Sectoring, cutting up the pie of the fireground, reading the building after the fire, a big one, and then wind. So after my incident, these are things that I personally just kind of wrote down. Could there be more? Hell yeah, there could be more. But these are the ones that I just kind of thought of when I really reflected on what took place with me. Sorry about that from the current. There we go. All right. So one of those check boxes, hose line selection and stretching proficiently. Not only, you know, hose line selection, we go to fires, bread and butter, residential house fires, day in and day out. We look on Facebook, we look on Twitter, we look on YouTube, and we're always critical of hose line selection. Why are those guys pulling an 1 3/4 when this is a 2.5? Or we'll talk about one of my big ones that I feel we get lost in the fog with in the next couple slides, the use of deck guns and blitzing a fire. But back to hose line selection and stretching proficiency. They go hand in hand. You have to understand what you have, but not only what you have, but what you're going to have in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But not only that, it goes both ways. Some of you may say, well, if I get a well-involved garden apartment, I'm going to stretch 2.5. Okay, well, you can get reverse lost in that fog and then knock down that fire and try to drag this 2.5 without breaking it down or doing anything else through this garden apartment with 2 or 3 people. Come on, it's not going to happen. So it goes both ways. When you need to take a smaller one, when you take a bigger one, and when you take a bigger one or a smaller one, when you need that 2.5. So that's how we can get lost. And there's a very good, in a longer program, I talk about a very good fire flow that they don't teach in Fire Academy anymore. It's length times width divided by 3. It's a square footage, or a rough guesstimate of a square footage divided by 3. And if the building is 100% involved, that's the GPM. If it's 50% involved, you'll cut that whatever that GPM is by half or a quarter. Those are things that you can do before the fire and have a good idea. And then stretching proficiency. Are you practicing stretching lines? This gentleman right here, if you have been in the fire service for less than now 17 years, you may not be aware of Oscar Armstrong. Backing up a tad, any line of duty deaths you see here that we talk about, I have full folders on, audio, PowerPoints that, maybe we can do another one of these with a specific program on a line of duty death, or you reach out to me, I can send you that information. But Oscar Armstrong was a Cincinnati, Ohio firefighter, and one of the problems was, as you can see here, the house was a typical 2.5-story wood frame house. The fire was in the kitchen area. Now, for whatever reason, and I'm not getting into why, every city firefighting is local. You have to set your equipment up, your apparatus up for what you cover. For whatever reason, Oscar's Engine Company in Cincinnati had a 350-foot cross line. Now, if they have large areas, okay, then you need a 350-foot cross line. But whatever you carry, how proficient are you at stretching that line? And one of the major problem that happened to Oscar, and again, you can research, and I have the raw video. It's an old VHS tape that's been converted, so it's not the quality. And you might be able to find it online. I don't know, but the hose line basically got caught up and kinked, and Oscar didn't have any water, and that kitchen flashed, and that first floor flashed, and it severely burned Oscar. The video is graphic. It is sobering when they pull him out of a window, and it's something that probably every firefighter should see to emphasize the lessons that after 17 years should not be forgotten. So if you're unaware of what took place, again, there's lots of information on the line of duty death of Oscar Armstrong. It was March of, I believe it was 2003. It might have been 2002, but if you just research Oscar Armstrong, Cincinnati Fire Department, there is lots of information on that. And again, the lesson there's tons, but the big one is, to me, that I want to share with you is stretching proficiency. Are we stretching proficiently for what we have on our apparatus? Oh boy. Deck gun, anybody? This is the biggest one that I see. I'm an old command officer now, so should I probably go to all these hands-on schools where they're stretching lines and all that? Yeah, it's not going to hurt me. But do I? No, because I kind of focus on the command aspect and the leadership stuff. But if you're a firefighter, those classes are phenomenal. But I also think, and they're taught by great instructors, and they emphasize that stretching of the hose lines and getting those into positions and improving your proficiency. But sometimes when you go to those classes, I just sometimes wonder if they don't touch on it, if then you forget that thing on top of your apparatus called a deck gun. I was talking earlier before the class, and we were talking, Jordan and I were talking about how fire departments now are being cut because of the virus. And there is a fire department nearby, and it's Strongsville, Ohio, that I was telling Jordan went from, they have 4 stations, and they used to have like 14, 15 people on duty, to where they now have 8, 2 people at each station. I don't know if any of you are close to Mansfield. If you go to Facebook and type in Mansfield firefighters, they constantly are putting on how their staff is being cut because of budgets and the virus. If you are lightly staffed, regardless of whether it's a budget crisis or that's just the way you always have been, you better figure out how to use the deck gun and use your tank water. And that is so important, but it's also training and utilizing it. Don't think that if overnight you're going to be able to just at 3 in the morning put your gun in service, because ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you from personal experience, it doesn't work. When I first took over command of my shift, we had a large residential Illyria's type of structures are old, 2.5-story wood frame, balloon frame. There ain't much new in the city of Illyria. Everything is, type 3 and platform and balloon frame type 2. That said, we had a kid who was running around setting fires, and I had a well-involved vacant encroaching on 2 other houses. So I basically had 3 houses. And I asked the first engine in to put their gun in service. And my thought process was, we're going to empty this tank and we're going to make a knock on this fire, and then we'll get a supply line and go from there. Well, if you don't train your crews on being able to put your gun in service off of tank water, and then work on those 3 people or 2 people getting that supply, you're going to fail if you order that or any other kind of tactic at 3 in the morning if you don't practice it. Well, I failed. I didn't teach my shift or my crew. We didn't discuss that ahead of time, and it just didn't work. Some of the things that we do now is that I'll find a vacant and we'll go through that first engine in, blitz that fire. Well, the 3 people, a company officer is in charge of 2 or 3 people. So, you have to be able to multitask. Think of all the days. One of the things that is so big in the fire service now is, okay, crew accountability. We want to stay crew accountability, no freelancing. And we get so zeroed in that as a new officer, we can't work independently. Us 3 have got to stay together. The pump operator has to get his pump or her pump going. I got to do my 360, and the back end person has to, well, if I put him or her on top of the deck gun, then we're not going to be able to do this bull crap. You have to train on that as an officer to say, okay, Bill, I'm going to hop up. There'll be no 360. We'll talk about that, why, and how I would say not to do that in certain situations. We'll get to that. But you have to train on that. This was just on the internet today. This fire, I'm not being critical. That is not how we operate in the fire service. We watch and we observe and we say, how can I do this in my department if I have this kind of fire? I'm so tired of the toxicity on Facebook and Twitter of that bitching and moaning. That has to stop. It's too much. But this was just on Twitter. A very good firefighter, and I don't know if she's on today, Lexi Shady, had put I don't know if she shared this or whatever, but I found this. And this is a fire, and it's a garage fire. It is an unattached garage on fire. Now, the Twitter comments were scathing. These guys here, they had, this little stream, and everybody's, oh, that sucks. You guys, what are you doing? Oh, okay. Well, they're not really doing much. Now, maybe they have a water problem. But let's say this is your department and you don't have a water problem. You have a hydrant, okay? Well, you know what? I don't know what all these other guys are doing, but there's that thing right there on that deck gun that I have to be careful. I don't want to draw anything you guys will laugh at, but knocking that down with that gun, it's unattached. Blitz that damn thing. So we get lost in that fog of stretching inch 3/4, inch 3/4, inch 3/4. Well, somebody said, well, I'll just stretch 2.5. Great. But if you only have 3 people, I'm all about that. That's fine. But just think about, and you're going to see what turned me into a believer here shortly.
Chief, not to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But
no, go ahead.
It's funny you say about the 2.5. I've been reading up on Cincinnati Fire and their SOPs.
Mm-hmm.
If they put a 2.5 in service, the first due engine,
mm-hmm.
the second engine marries up to that 2.5 line. So they put the first 2 engines on the first line.
Perfect.
So that's a great point about being short-staffed.
Here's a great, okay, so I'm going to back up before I should, because it is an important point that Jordan talks about. And I do speak on this in my longer classes, that a lot of fire departments, including my own, here's how the Elyria Fire Department has worked for a million years. First engine in, attack. Second engine in, probably water supply, but then once they get an established water supply, they take a second attack line to back up the first. And we can debate what backup means and all the other stuff. But our goal when you are short-staffed is you have to put water on the fire. If you don't put water on the fire, nothing else is going to matter. If you only arrive with 6, 7, 5, 3, whatever, none of us work in a St. Louis or Cleveland. If you are watching this, great. I'm humbled. But you can throw 30, 40 people at a first alarm. My goal is to get water on the fire with 13 people, not counting me, and really 12, taking out the first in pump operator. So marrying up companies is also going to improve things as far as getting that first hose line in service. Plus, if you are a company officer on a 3-person crew and you're first arriving, your pump operator is going to be doing pump operator stuff. So it's you and your back-end firefighter. How effectively as a company officer will you be able to stretch that line and do all your company officer things? How good are you going? I don't care. You're not. Whereas now if you have, let's say, all 3-man companies like we do in Elyria, you have the pump operator, first 2 on that pumper, an officer and firefighter, you stretch that line. Now here comes the second engine. They can marry up. Now you have 5 people, 1 officer, and 4 others stretching that line. Whether it's a 2.5, inch 3/4, you get that line in position faster and get water on the fire quicker. And I challenge you to try that and test that out. All right. So great thing. Jordan, you interrupt me anytime.
Okay.
Don't forget the deck gun. So we're back to the deck gun. If you haven't seen this, this is on LA County Fire Department. Has lots of money, and they have lots of starving filmmakers. And so they have these real cool ritzy videos that are on Vimeo. I think I said it right, Vimeo or whatever it is. It's a different YouTube, but they have their own site. And I got this off of their site, and it changed my mind about deck gun versus stretching a line.
Give firefighters the right tools and we can get the job done. Pulling hose, forcing doors, or throwing ladders. We always try to put our people in the right place to save lives and property. But are you using all the tools in your firefighting toolbox? One tool often overlooked is the deck gun. Many firefighters and company officers consider it solely a defensive weapon and not an initial attack option. Obviously, this method of attack is not always an option. Limited access, obstacles, or potential for water damage that exceeds the fire threat may call for traditional deployment of hand lines. The decision to use big water from the deck gun belongs to the captain, while the effective use of the tool rests with the crew.
LA Engine 3 at 1320 Northeastern Avenue. I have a one-story residential structure with an exterior fire at the AD corner.
Benny, give me 30 seconds of deck gun on that fire. Engine 1 from Engine 3 on command. You'll have fire attack off Engine 3. Take an 1 3/4 hand line and stretch it to the front door. Check the interior for extension. Upon arrival at a working fire, it is suggested you secure a water supply. Although securing a water supply prior to putting the deck gun in service is ideal, this may not always be possible. Even without an immediate water supply, it may be beneficial to use the deck gun for a short period of time to control the fire. After or during the short application of water, the proper hand line should be deployed to check the interior for exposure, conduct search and rescue, or knock down any remaining fire. This can be accomplished by the first-in-engine crew or assigned to other resources as they arrive. With many of our engine companies being staffed by 3 personnel, dynamic incidents can be a challenge for even a well-trained fire company. Utilizing the deck gun can help overcome these challenges as it allows for control of the fire while maintaining incident priorities, company unity, safety, and incident command. The company officer can perform a 360-degree building assessment while the firefighter begins incident stabilization and the engineer secures a water supply. We've given you another tool for your toolbox. Now go out and train, so when the opportunity presents itself, you'll know when to use it. And remember, don't forget the deck gun.
Now this next one is important because they do put it on the clock. And I challenge you all watching this to do this. Tomorrow will be a good day. It's supposed to be hot. You throw some water and cool off.
In this video, Training Services has provided a side-by-side comparison of utilizing a deck gun versus deploying a hand line. As you can see, the deck gun with a 1.5-inch stacked tip will deliver 300 GPM faster than the 1 3/4 hand line at 150 GPM, twice the amount of water in less than half the time.
Now, one of the things that I caution you on when you train, and here's why you need to train, is if you have a 500-gallon tank, everybody says, well, I don't want to run out of water. If you have a couple things to be effective on this, is that you need stacked tips. And if, you know, the 1 3/8, which is be the very pretty much top tip on your stack tips of most master streams, is going to give you 500 gallons per minute. Okay, well, they say, well, if I have a 500-gallon tank, it's going to empty me out in a minute. Well, yeah, genius, it will. But the way I've always described it in my classes, this is what I do. I take the biggest person in the room and the smallest person, and I tell that they're going to get in a fight, and all firemen love to gamble. And so we're going to bet on who's going to win in this fight. And everybody's going, well, I'm going to take the big person. But if I give the little person a baseball bat and tell that person to hit the big person as hard as they freaking can in the kneecap, what's going to happen to that bigger person? They're going to drop. That's what the deck gun does. It's a blitz. It's to give you some time. If you run out of water and you have to get a supply, so what? As long as you know where your hydrant is and you have that supply, to me, and this is my opinion, a good friend of mine and a mentor named Pete Lamb, who's a chief in the Northeast, has said it's everybody worries about running out of water, but nobody worries about running out of building. And what he meant was not running physically out of the building, but running out of the building itself is starting to come down, that we can maybe save something. And so blitzing requires a couple things: stack tips, and then the ability of that pump operator to do what another mentor of mine, Frank Ritchie, has said, the sweet spot. You have to be able to throttle up before you open that gun valve, to where when you open that gun valve, you're going to have enough pressure to where you're not dumping all your water into the front yard. So you have to train on that. What is that sweet spot? Some fire departments have put a gate between their stream shaper and their tips, or somewhere along that line, to where they can charge that pipe. One person can hop up there, swing the gun into position, open that gate, and you'll have water. I caution that if you do that, make sure that if you have an extended gun, that pressure doesn't pop that gun up prematurely. So that's just a warning. But that shutoff, here's another thing that a lot of Chicago fire department companies used to do. The blitz used to be very, well, and it still is a popular tactic in Chicago. Chicago Fire delivers 30-some people on a first alarm, or a box that they call. And so you think, well, why do they have to use their gun? And they also have 4- and 5-man engine companies. One of the things they've done is they'll take a nozzle shut off, which is another thing that they'll be able to do is, okay, so instead of using that valve, they'll put like a nozzle shut off on that gun and utilize that. There's lots of things that you can do, but regardless, train on that. And this was a believer in me right here and utilizing the deck gun.
Chris Bowler with Tactical Fireground Operations. Training today is going to be over a transitional fire attack for rapid fire advancement incidents. We're representing here, we have a parking garage that's going to simulate a multifamily dwelling. And we'll have a camera pan right here. You're going to notice some traffic cones that are set up. These are going to represent bodies of fire both on the 2nd and 3rd floor. The goal here is to arrive, make a rapid transitional attack, and then move in with your initial line for a quick knockdown on the interior of the structure. The benefits of this setup are a reduced rapid fire advancement and thermal threat on both victims and exposures. Allows for a quicker knockdown while your initial attack line is being set up by your first lineman. It also buys your crew time to go ahead and extricate victims that are ahead of the fire. It also efficiently and effectively places a majority of your max flow where the advancing fire is at, ahead of obviously your interior attack.
We're going to basically then they're going to go into position. One thing, and we're going to move ahead a little bit here, but one thing to remember also is, you know, can you also train on that 3-person company of wrapping and power laying in? So let's say, you know, you're the only engine company coming in, or you're a part-time department whose staffing is poor at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you only have 3 or 4 people on the first arriving engine, and you're going to utilize your gun. Training on that coordination of dumping a guy off at the hydrant, power laying in, and utilizing the remaining members to get that gun into position while you're getting your supply and getting that water started. So another thing to train on. All right, 360s, which we'll get into, but a rule that I have in my department, in my shift, and I probably need to remind my officers again this, is if you're putting your gun in service, don't worry about the 360 right away, okay? If you're putting your gun in service, that's I don't care what you call it, transitional, defense. Bottom line is, nobody's going inside right away for the few couple seconds, all right? So it's somebody will get a 360 done. We need to do a 360. We need to do a 360. We need to do a 360. However, if you're the first company in and you have other companies arriving, and you know that there are other companies coming in, or you have a command officer coming in, and there's the 3 of you, and you know that someone will be there in a few more seconds, I'd rather have that 3-person crew get that blitz in service. And very simple. Engine 1's on a scene, well involved, 2.5-story wood frame. We're going with our blitz or our gun. No 360 at this time. Okay, great. Next engine in, or this so-and-so, give me a 360. It's just coordination and radio talk and doing that. It's coordination. Not listening to interior reports or not getting them at all. What are you saying at the fire scene? How are you saying it? Are you talking too much? One of the best things, I am not a big proponent when I teach, and I do a lot of, I teach at FDIC. I travel around the country. I'm not saying it to brag, but one of the things that I make a rule of myself when I travel and I teach is that I never tell a fire department how to make up their own procedures. There's one exception. One of the best things we ever done in my city was do CAN reports and conditions, actions, and needs. Picture everybody watching this. Take in your head, maybe you are this person, but if not, picture in your head the most senior firefighter or the most senior person or command boss or whatever, and the newest. So let's say you have a chief up front with a portable radio with 35 years, and you have a brand new lieutenant with 5 years. That command officer out front, if you don't have a condition, action, and needs, that person going in, that officer going in, is going to tell that command officer what he or she knows based on 5 years experience. Whereas if you have a template, conditions, actions, and needs, and you train on that, you could put anybody in that position just about. And if they are going in with that idea of getting command back, conditions, actions, and needs, things would be so much better on the Fireground. It is the absolute best thing we ever done in my city. We probably do need to train on it more, but we put this in place probably about 5-6 years now. And all I have to do is say engine 3 CAN report, boom. And we're all on the same page. So how we can get lost in that fog is not listening to interior reports or not getting them at all. And by not listening, again, I don't mean by ignoring them, but not putting things together. We'll talk about those. Type, timing, and tempo. You know, we have to practice how we talk on the radio. This is my time to tell you and everyone watching this that one of the best things that you can do is to listen to audio from around the country. And there's a couple sites that you can go to that you can do that. And one is Broadcastify. And for 35, 40 bucks, it might be more now. You have archived audio from all over the world. You can listen live on that app. If you take your phone and just type in Broadcastify, you can listen to your heart's content of thousands and thousands of fire and police departments. But if you pay that subscription fee, you get, I think now it's a year. It used to be 6 months, but now it's a year's worth of archived audio. And so you can find out about a fire in whatever, XYZ, and as long as you know roughly the date, the time of the fire in the county that the city is in, that's how it's grouped on that Broadcastify. Or some towns are on there. There's lots of towns that if you just type into town, you can go back and pull up every 30 minutes of recording of the Fireground. And the next thing you would do is maybe paint, put a picture of the house up from Google Maps or whatever, and you listen, and you listen to the audio and how I would talk. If there is one thing that I could go back in time and fix, I became a lieutenant in 1995. I was 25 years old. I thought I knew it all, but I sounded like an idiot on the radio. I talked too much. I yelled. If there was one thing that I could go back and change, then how I am now is how I talk on the radio. And some of that is experience, but I wish I listened, or we had this opportunity in 1995 to listen to radio traffic. Listen to radio traffic. If your town has a working fire, it's public record. Get the archive, get the radio of that. Broadcastify is a great way. Another one that I've just stumbled on is it is called, and I'm looking this up, it's called Open MHZ megahertz. Open and then MHZ. If you Google that, that is a website that is somewhat like Broadcastify, but it's a little easier to navigate, and it has a lot easier transmissions to pull up from DC, LA City. I'm trying to think of there's not as many as Broadcastify, but again, if you know where fire, where it took place, the fire in LA that severely burned those members that a lot of you've seen, went to Broadcastify and pulled up the audio, and I listened. So that's how you learn. That is how you learn, and I encourage you. One last website is Erie County Firewire. Erie County Firewire has every working fire archived from the city of Buffalo, and Buffalo runs a lot of fires. And you can pull up the audio, and you can listen, and not only that, it gives you the address, so you can pull the address up on Google Maps, and you can look at the building or house and play the audio, and it's the best way to get better. All right. We talked about audio, not listening to reports, or not being able to put them together, what your crews are saying inside and painting that picture. Another very good website, and this is a class in itself that I do at Bowling Green, is if you're unaware of this website, go to it. What's so great about it is this gentleman, Don Abbott, breaks down every aspect of close calls and maydays that have occurred, that he gets information on around the country, and he updates it every 6 months. It's called Project Mayday. If you go to type in Project Mayday and you scroll all the way down, you see 2 PDF PowerPoints. One is paid, and the other one is volunteer. If you're a part-time department, he puts your data and your stats in the volunteer. You click on whatever you belong to, and it is unbelievable the amount of information he's gained from surveys of members who've been involved in Maydays. Project Mayday. So anyway, Don Abbott wrote an article in Firehouse about 2 years ago, and it's called 16 Audio Cues to a Mayday. And it's another class that I kind of created out of that article. And what he did was he looked at 3,000 Mayday reportings that he's researched, and these phrases were involved or uttered in 88% of those. Zero visibility conditions. We have fire above our heads. You can see the 16 of them. And you can say to yourself, well, gosh, yeah, it's a no-brainer. They had a flashover. Of course, they're probably going to have a Mayday if they got guys inside. Well, by researching and studying those close calls or line of duty deaths where those terms were uttered, and some we will review tonight, you can then paint that picture when you hear it on the Fireground or you utter it yourself in your radio on the Fireground to take a step back. You're crawling through a commercial building or a house fire and you see fire coming up again on the floorboards. You go, Engine 3 to command, we got fire below us. I think we got fire below us. Well, it's more than just uttering it. By this studying and knowing these 16 audio cues, it may stimulate you to think, okay, what are the hazards here? What is going on? What, and all those things. So again, we could go on and on about this particular slide, but it's something to look at. If you Google that, I believe you can still pull up the article. I have a PowerPoint built around these 16 things that I'll be more than happy to share, or maybe again, we can do a class on it. But anyway, audio is in listening to the radio and deciphering that information. We can lose track of that on the Fireground. Oh boy, now we've come to my mistake. No 360. You can have your heart set on doing a 360, but there will be times where things are going to be out of your control that you're not going to get it done. And the biggest one is people coming out and greeting you in the street and taking your attention away from getting a 360 done. That's what happened to me on this one. That is what was one of the reasons why 2 firefighters were killed in Coleraine Township, Ohio, in 2008. The homeowner met them out at the street. The video you're going to see was taken by a news station that was coming into my town to do a story on an APL. It was a good feel-good story after Christmas. They saw smoke in the sky and arrived before we did.
Everybody out of the house? Everybody out of the house? No, something's good. Get on the ground. Don't walk
That's
up high.
the news reporter.
Crawl in there. Crawl down, crawl on the ground.
Come on, get on your
Now,
knees.
those people saw a gentleman who lived in that house, and he had come out and he went back in for his dog. So when I arrived, we had an actual live reported viable victim.
Get on your knees and crawl.
Crawl fast. Get out of
Hurry
there.
up.
Can you see him? Is he coming? Can you reach him? Can you touch?
No.
Can you see him at all?
Here. Sir.
You still there? That ceiling's dropping.
That's how Illyrian goes.
Where's he at?
Hello?
Now, we arrived, I pulled up in a buggy and parked across the street, and I got out, and a couple things wrapped me into this fog. Number one, I had been on fatal fires. I'm not some grizzly veteran where we got off fatal fires every day or people trapped. Okay, but I had been on them. And I kind of give it away. I sang a fatal fire, but I have been to fires where we've had people trapped. But when I pulled up, they had all been fatal fires, I guess. But when I pulled up, people said, well, we were talking to them. And I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that, wait a minute, you're talking to somebody? You're actually talking to somebody? All the fires I've been on that have been these fatals, the people were dead. When we got to them, they were dead. And so I got lost in that. Strike one. Number two is because I let everybody get to me.
Somebody in there!
I didn't do a 360.
Where are you, sir? Is he coming?
Hello?
Sir, you sound like an old guy!
Right by
It
the
sounds-
back door.
It sounds like an old guy in there!
Now, quickly, I will say a couple other things about getting lost in the fog. You will not always have your A players in the right positions. I don't care what leadership book you subscribe to, what coach you want to watch and read, and I don't care how good you want to make things feel around your fire department. But the bottom line is, you're not always going to have your A players in the right positions every single day. That doesn't diminish anybody. It's just that some members are different than others and have different skill sets. And you have to apply that. To think, well, everybody's going to be the same is bullshit. On this particular day in the city of Elyria, this was during a crisis of epic proportions in my department of layoffs and cuts. In my department, when I started on the job, we had 17 people on duty and 4 fire stations and 4 engine companies in a truck and some days a rescue truck. We don't run ambulances in Elyria. So I went from having 17 to at this point, at this time of the fire, to whatever showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning for duty. And on this particular day, I had, I believe, 10. If you try to fight a fire every day with 20 to 17 people, and all of a sudden you have a day where you only have 10, and you try to fight the fires the same way as you grew up with, you're going to get lost in that fog. The gentleman that you see in the back end getting his equipment on our truck is a great firefighter, but he had always ridden on an engine company. He is a great firefighter, but he'd never been on this truck. He's riding an engine. This truck was new, and a truck in Elyria does truck stuff. He performed at the highest level, but he'd been in first time in this position because of cuts. I didn't take that into consideration either. Excuse me, I don't know how to erase my circles, so just bear with my little circles on the screen for a few more seconds. All right, so that firefighter right there is now a fellow assistant chief. At the time, and this is my now chief of department, but these two are going to stretch the line. And bottom line was they stretched in, and now I'll answer this question for you. but that gentleman is not alive anymore. I still haven't done a 360. They went in this front door here, and for the sake of time, they went in, this front porch was enclosed, but then it went into a front door. They went in here with their line. They kicked ass. They knocked down some fire. There was a lot of fire and a lot of stuff going on the Bravo Charlie. Had I gone all the way around, I would have gotten a better look at the entire house. This was a chopped up house, and I would have had a better idea. They went in and the conditions were so bad, their portables, the heat melted out of their portables and they couldn't contact me. Long story short, I failed those 2 guys. And I failed those other 9 guys that day. And I got lost in that fog. I let the situation run me and not the other way around. No matter what position you are in, you must always, always, always run the show and not let the show run you. If you get caught in that fog, you could get hurt or you could get others hurt. And I never have forgotten that. And that is how I created this class, because of my being lost. I had thought I knew it all. I had studied and trained. In 2009, I had 20 years on. I had also served as the chief of the department the year prior and had run the biggest fire to date in the city's history of a 4-block mill complex burning. My ego screwed me too that night, this day. You can't let your ego screw you either. And from this day forward, I try to always balance my knowledge in the scene and not let that happen. And you got to get a 360. You cannot let people control you. After this fire, I try to always run my fires from the buggy. It's another day, another debate. But I had run fires until then and grew up in an environment of the assistant chief standing out front or the command officer standing out front and sticking their heads in everywhere with that portable radio. I won't go back to that, because if things go south, I want to be in that position. Now, will I get out and do a 360? Yes, but I get right back so nobody bothers me. Or I order a 360 done by my captain on the truck or first in engine or whatever to give me that information. But once you get that 360 done and you are a buggy rider, if you're a command officer watching this, or you're in a community that has that, get back to that. If you arrive on an engine and have to take command, I'm not saying you got to sit in an engine, but find a spot where you can back people away, where you can find a policeman to say, get these people away from me, but keep the situation under control at all costs. This was the back end of the house, about probably the best picture I could get, but well involved. Didn't have the best controlled venting. This was before a lot of what we know about UL, but the crews were coming in and it was just nothing but fire, and he just didn't have enough power. They knocked down a lot, but the heat and the amount of fire did not match my 2 guys on that line. Survivability profile, kind of a difficult word, but what this means is, can you actually save them? We're not playing God, but you have to take into account the conditions. Montgomery County, Cherubusco Lane. Many of you have probably seen this video, but you're going to find out the rest of the story.
Fire is super hard. Look at the fire, man. Look at the fire, I can't believe this. Look at the fire. Oh, oh! Oh! Oh,
basically the front wall came down after the floor collapsed. So what happened here? Well, not many, I don't know what you have in your neck of the woods, but these were townhomes, and it really doesn't matter. It's more, think about the survivability profile of what you have on arrival. But bottom line was they had a back, 3 in the rear, 2 in the front. So on the A side, it was 2 stories, and the rear was 3, which didn't play a role. Everybody knew that there was fire. What took place was a occupant. There was 3 young men living there in their 20s, 1 on each floor of this townhome. So there was 1 person on each floor. The person in the ground floor, which you want to call the basement or whatever you want to call it, that had a fire in the sofa, and you can see he tried moving it, got stuck, it lit off, vented, and he got a basement fire. All 3 occupants got the hell out, okay? All 3 left. First engine in, like I said, they knew they had fire in the ground level, okay? So this wasn't a fact of a basement fire that they fell through the floor or anything like that. Everybody and their brother was on the same page. Went in the A side, they had some, obviously heat, went to defensive right here. One of those 3 members, or 3 occupants' moms, arrived. She didn't know that her son had gotten out. She found a policeman. Somebody had gotten hold of her and said, hey, Johnny's house is on fire. Okay, like any mom, she ran to the scene. Found police officer, said, my son, this is my son's. Police officer took her to command. Now you're going to hear the first in audio. Command then launched a search and sent crews up onto the 2nd floor, and that's when the collapse occurred. As you can read that, I won't read that. Everybody watching can read that, but there was the duty chief is like a citywide boss. He did not take command. This chief here, 705, was in command. The duty chief sees the mom went up to him. He launched a rescue. The duty chief sees the crews going in, all right, and he goes, basically, what are you doing? We're defensive and you're putting people in. And the chief's like answered that, yeah, I know that, but this is what we're doing because now we got somebody trapped inside.
Just a report, all occupants out of the house. 2-story middle row townhouse. I got smoke showing side Alpha. I got heavy fire showing side Charlie. Go ahead and start me a task force.
Montgomery's okay.
So that was the arrival.
Battalion Chief 703, I want you to manage the side Charlie position from out there and supervise that operation. Okay, I want a master stream on it from the side Charlie side from Middlebrook Road.
Paramedic Tower 7-1 command. Do you want us to set up back there? We just drove by. Side Charlie had 2 to 3 stories and the whole back was fully involved.
Yeah, I saw that when I came out. Yeah, set up on the back side and prepare for ladder pipe operation there. Yeah, we saw somebody possibly get still unaccounted for. From your side, can you gain access to the fire department to start a search from your side to assist the rest?
Yeah, you want to search 19-350, the fire count.
Okay, I'm going to assign you to the search group with the rescue squad. Yeah, we saw somebody possibly. Duty chief to command. Duty chief, go ahead. We need to declare strategy. There's operations from the outside in and the inside. So we're going to have to pick one of those to go with it. Okay. Already declared that we go ahead and attack with a fastest ring exterior from side Charlie. We have units on the inside understanding that. Duty chief to command. Duty chief, go ahead. We need to declare strategy.
So basically what took place here then, was
Just a report.
they had mixed messages, but the bottom line is on survivability profile is this. You heard the original, okay, occupants out. Okay, I know that there could still be some, you know, I'm not talking vacants and all that. I'm talking this occupied, and they said to the first engine, everybody in the house is out. They go defensive, a defensive fire in a townhome built less than 10, 15 years ago. What does that equal? Modern construction, basement fire, trusses. All these things were coming together and nobody was putting it together. The duty chief did, but the command still wasn't putting things together and was throwing guys up onto the second floor 24 minutes
yeah, we saw somebody
after
your
defensive
side,
operations.
to the fire department,
So if you're running defensive operations for 20 minutes, okay, well, let's say they tried it for 10 minutes and then they backed out. So 14 minutes of defensive operations. If you think there's anybody surviving, I'm not saying it can't happen, but you have to keep that in mind, that survivability profiling. This, you should be able to research this, and the audio is on SoundCloud. If not, I can send you all the audio. I did a little program on this, another separate program, but survivability profile, they kind of got lost in that. Today's fire environment. These are all the things that I think we have a pretty good idea of today's fire environment that we have to consider. He says it well. This is Don Majikowski. I think that's how you say it, from UL. Listen to what he says.
At UL's Fire Lab, and we were running some experiments for fire investigation. We had a 3,200 square foot house, two-story great room, open foyer, and we had a ranch house, not too much unlike this ranch house down here. And we were looking at the differences in the amount of air that's trapped in the house at the beginning of the fire to see how much the fire ramps up. And we fill the house with fuel. And we go to the furniture store and we bought some sofas, we bought some chairs. And there's a big thing going on in this country. Most of you are probably aware because a lot of you are under 40. And that's that people like to shop online. They want to buy things from online. So if you're going to buy something from online, what's pretty important to Amazon and Wayfair and all the big people in the market? Shipping. How are they going to get it to you? So it's important that things are pretty light. So if you want to buy a chair and they can offer you free shipping, that might entice you to click. They want you to click. Put your credit card in and click. So we bought some chairs and sofas from online. The sofas were quite a surprise. They came in 2 boxes, about 30 inches square and about 12 inches tall. There's a little bit of assembly required. All the foam cushions were vacuum packed. They were flat as a pancake. We had to let them open up and breathe. We had to put the wood frames together. And at the end of the day, it looked like a pretty nice sofa. But it's light, very lightweight, low density. What did you guys learn about surface to mass ratio and how that impacts burning and ignition? The chair, though, was the real surprise. We had the chair. It was relatively light, less than 20 pounds. We put a match to it under our calorimeter so we could get a heat release rate from it. In less than 2 minutes, it was a molten puddle on the floor with flames about 8 feet tall, giving us over 1 megawatt of energy.
That's today's materials that you have to understand, today's modern environment of what you're going into and why it's so important to be able to stretch proficiently, get your guns in service, all those things because of today's modern furnishings. If you're watching this and you're unaware of what is transpiring at UL and UL Firefighter Safety, I encourage you, they also have what's called a UL Firefighter Academy now, I believe it's called. I encourage you to research that. There's tons of information and great things that you can utilize and watch to where you really don't have to do too much thinking. They talk to you and you get such a good representation of today's fire environment and fire behavior. Residential tactics at commercial fires. We get lost in that fog. We go on more residential fires than we do commercial fires. Are you taking those same tactics to the commercial building? If you are, you're going to fail. You cannot match those same sort of tactics, but it's easy when you do it day after day, month after month, and all of a sudden you try to take those residential tactics to a type 3 Main Street building or a strip mall or a big box or whatever. Scott Dean, San Antonio Fire Department, strip mall. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to play the audio, but again, another program that I have, Scott was lost in a strip mall, in a large gym, if you will. It was a gym. It was like it was a large strip mall, unprotected, no sprinklers, and they had a world gym or whatever you want to call it. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the first engine company came in, and they had a working fire in this gym.
Hey, Chief.
Yeah.
Anybody from the Lima area, or you come up and visit, if you're on Cable Road and you see where our Planet Fitness is at, the Clock Tower Plaza, that's this fire right here. This is very, very similar to it. Bath Township may be very similar to your plaza that you guys have as well.
So one thing to remember when you go into those buildings, look up and see how high the ceiling is. Now, smoke in your house compared to a fitness center, if the smoke is heavy and black and thick and banked down the floor of a residential structure and hot, that's bad. Now, take that and make that ceiling now 12 feet instead of 8 feet, and it's banked down to the floor and it's black and it's hot. What the hell are you going into? Smoke is fuel. And
I'm sure.
And that is what Scott Dean went into. And it was residential tactics at a commercial building. And they were going to do a search of a gym. And they got lost. And the fire flashed. The fire was above them. Again, I can supply you with a program or audio. And they say a lot of Don Abbott's audio cues. Fire above their heads. The fire was in the drop ceiling above of this gym. Zero visibility conditions for a long period of time. And they're lucky, it's not lucky, but they were lucky they only lost one. They could have lost a lot more in this fire. I will play this real quick.
35 is on scene. We do have smoke showing coming from the roof of a large strip center. Ladder 35 is going to investigate with Engine 35. All companies continue. We're going to be offensive. Dispatch, stand by. We may be dropping a second here.
Jordan, we may go over that 8:30 thing if that's okay.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay, so here's the other thing. Listen to what they said. Listen to audio. Listen to, as a company officer, listen to all those things that, San Antonio, hell, they see a lot more fire than I've seen. It's San Antonio. It's a big city. But that company officer arriving on that engine, think about that for a minute. He's rattling off a lot of information from the cab of a pumper pulling in. Now, there might be some things. There's always two sides to every story. Maybe he saw some other things, but another good lesson in listening to this audio and being able to look at the building and the report, and I'll tell you where to get this report here in a second, is, instead of trying to regurgitate everything out in the cab of the truck, take a breath, take a minute, tell everybody to stand by. Just give yourself some time. You know, if just, I'm not saying be slow. I'm not saying to drag your ass. I'm saying just tell everybody, hold on a minute. I'll get back to you. We got a working fire. Everybody be ready to come to work. I'll get back to you in a second. Rather than, I think we sometimes, especially young officers, feel like they got to say everything right there because the world is listening. And yeah, the world's listening, and some idiot in Elyria, Ohio at his dining room table is sitting there with his iPad going, oh, fire, I'm going to listen. But you have to take a step back and take a breath.
35 was, we have fire through the roof. We can force the door back here, see if we can get some water on the fire here. But right now we're still have the motor position where you told me to hold it.
One of the other issues that they had here was they were able to hit the fire in the rear, but command, when the boss got there, he did not want opposing streams. And so, yeah, at a residential dwelling, opposing streams is a no-no, and I'm sure in some commercial dwellings, but at some point you got to get water on the fire. And he was afraid of pushing that fire down on those firefighters inside doing a search, or it stretched to the A side. Again, it's okay to kind of coordinate those things over the radio. You know, I don't know, I wasn't there, but, you know, you have to be able to, hey, we can hit it here. Okay, stand by. Command engine 30, where are you? We can hit it from here. Do you want to back out to the front door for a second? We can hit it here. You have to be able to think like that. This report is available. This is, you sure you can get the NIOSH report, but this report is available on a site called Texas State Fire Marshal. If you Google Texas State Fire Marshal, unfortunately, the state of Texas has had its fair share of line of duty deaths, and they do a report on all of them that have occurred in the last 20 years. And it is far more in-depth and more investigative than an NIOSH report. A little plug here, I do 2 different podcasts for fire engineering. One of them is called Main Street Firefighting, and I interviewed the chief of a town, Bryan, Texas, that lost a firefighter. We'll talk a little bit about tonight. But he had mentioned to me that NIOSH came in, but they have a timetable. They're a government agency. They only have so much money. Another town that I interviewed some members of that were Hamilton, Ohio, that lost a firefighter in a basement fire. They said the same thing, that the NIOSH report just wasn't exactly all that it's cracked up to be. I'm not saying don't read NIOSH reports. I'm not saying don't follow NIOSH reports. But if you have a chance and you only have a few minutes to in your day, or an hour in your day, and you have the same fire, and you have a NIOSH report versus an internal report, or an in-depth investigative report by an outside agency, go with that. Read that rather than the NIOSH report. That's all I'll say. It's not that they're bad. It's just that you'll glean more from that.
We have fire scenes. We are 10 minutes into the incident. We do have a working fire. Heavy smoke volume. We have 1 crew inside.
Heavy smoke volume. 10 minutes in. They're doing a search. Is there anybody alive in this thing? No. If the smoke's been down to the floor, sure, you could say there's somebody in the bathroom. But you know what? In the Elyria, Ohio Fire Department, I pull up with 14 people. Okay. I have to decide, what am I going to do? Now, maybe in San Antonio, they had enough resources and they could maybe do a search and launch attack and all that, but many of us don't. But you also have to put together that survivability profile and that ability to match the tactics to what you have, and you can't get lost in that fog. Conditions changed. They had their mayday and they lost the firefighter. Another line of duty death that I encourage you all to review this line of duty death. Again, I'm telling you, this fire could occur in every one of our towns. This fire occurred in Bryan, Texas, city of about 70,000 people, but they lost the first in engine fire officer, Eric Wallace, and a RIT officer, Gregory Picard. And we'll talk about Mayday and preparation. This is the highlight for me on that. Fire occurred in a VFW hall, which we all have, no windows, okay? I apologize, this was turned, this is the A side, but here's another look at it from the A side. The first engine in, Eric Wallace and his firefighter, again, another report that you can find on the Texas State Fire Marshal site. I can send you the information. And then you can also go to YouTube, type in Bryan, Texas, and you'll hear the audio. Chilling audio. Plus, I also interviewed the chief of this fire department. And if you really, you know, again, I'm not plugging the fire engineering podcast and all that, but I'm telling you, I've learned so much by interviewing people that have been involved in these to help me, not only me, but to help share when I do these programs. But you can find that on the Fire Engineering Podcast site, Blog Talk Radio site, with their chief, Randy McGregor is his name. But anyway, the first in engine stretched their line. And they got that loop. They got pretty deep in, and their bells started to ring. Another lost in the fog problem. The firefighter turned and started heading out. Eric Wallace was behind him. Firefighter made it past this loop, and when things started to turn to crap, they were able to grab him and get him out. Wallace got on this area here, could not find his way out. I'm moving very quickly. Do not just leave this to the 2 minutes I'm giving it. Read up on this fire. But the RIT crew, chief activated the RIT, Picard and his crew. They went in, and here's what I learned about RIT and assigning RIT, and I'll tell you in a second. They found Eric Wallace, but they didn't have any water, and this flashed. Picard's mask failed, and he died. Now, his two other members of RIT had to make a decision. They were burning up severely. And they had to get their captain, their lieutenant out, or Wallace. What a decision. They both perished. The two firefighters on their RIT severely burned, were off over a year. Again, I'm doing a lot of paraphrasing and quick talking. This fire has to be researched. What I learned from this was this. That RIT bag ain't magic. You need water. Or you have to have the ability to find water. If you're assigned RIT in what's happening here, XYZ Township, Ohio, one of the first things you need to do, if it's mutual aid, is you need to have a plan. And when you do your walk around and all that, but don't just think that RIT bag's magical. Make sure if you're the boss of that RIT team that you find a way, you know how to get water. We may not be able to get that brother or sister firefighter out, but we don't want them to burn to death. And water may make the difference. And that's what this fire taught me. And so now I make sure that RIT, most of the time it's going to be mutual aid, that they make sure they know where they can pull a line. Or if it's a good fire and you are assigned RIT, maybe you do pull a line and you know where to get it. Anyway, I don't care. I don't know what you want to do, but make it a part of your RIT. Water. If they float some of that water, maybe they don't lose those firemen. Just a thought. Reading the building. You have to be able to read the building. Back to my sister Lex, who did a wonderful job in building construction. There's lots of material. If you haven't seen her program that Jordan put on, I don't know if you can deliver it in an archive or whatever, but there's some books out there that I highly recommend. Building construction for the fire service, collapse of burning buildings, Firefighter Battle Space. That is, if you go to FDNY Pro, and if you Google FDNY Pro or you Google Firefighters Battle Space, that is the best book you can buy. That takes into consideration all those other two books, and it blends them into probably the best book that is out there on firefighting, hands down. It may not get into the tactics of stretching lines and how to do this, but it gives you a playbook on reading buildings. You got to be able to read the building. Delay and attack, entry, or stretching dry. Another thing we get lost in. If there's a delay in attack, you have a water issue, you can't find the seat of the fire. You can't get in because of bars and windows. Or stretching dry. I don't advocate that at all, unless, you know, even let's say, think about this. And the brothers in Lima told a story about them, a close call. Wasn't a amount of stretching dry, but it was a balloon frame. So think about this. You know, you go take a second line to a second floor, or let's say an old 3-story wood frame house, apartment building that is, you know, chopped up. And we have lots of in Illyria, or a few, I should say. And you stretch up there and you're going to say, you know what, there's only 2 of us or 3 of us, we're going to stretch dry. Don't do that. Charge a line, put enough people, get enough people on it. If you're assigned in command, you're not in command and you're assigned to do that, charge that line. Stretching dry in a residential dwelling is a no-no. If you want to do it in your larger apartment buildings, that may be another story, but whatever, anytime you stretch dry, always have in the back of your head what could happen. And again, in a residential dwelling, I'm not an advocate of it. Daryl Gordon. Another Cincinnati line of duty death, but read below here. The fire burned for 20 minutes. All right, without water. So back to this, delay and attack, okay? It only took them 6 minutes to knock it down after they got water. It was a 5-story apartment building. Fire was on the 2nd floor. Nothing showing. First engine in, engine 49, nothing showing. Went in, get down there and say, oh shit, got fire. All right. They did the right thing. The occupant had left the door open. They shut the door. Good stuff. Okay. You go to stretch a line, go out, stretch a line. Other units arrive. Someone takes out the slider, back slider that all these garden apartments have. Oxygen. Okay. Uncoordinated ventilation. I believe it was a chief's aide that took out that slider. This door fails. By the time they get the line, they had some pinch points and some issues with that line. This failed. Now, this fire was a can job when engine 49 arrived. Because of the uncoordinated ventilation, the stretching in engine 49, the stretching issues and a delay, because of those stretching issues, this fire is growing. Multiple alarms are called. We talk about the radio and communications. So how did Daryl Gordon die? Again, I'm moving very fast here. And this internal report is the one you want to find. Google Cincinnati Daryl Gordon internal report. Don't look at the NIOSH report. The internal report is so much better. But the original alarm companies went up to the 5th floor. They found a shaft. They marked it, but they didn't report it on the radio because they said, shit, they're going to get this fire. There's nothing going on here. It's a little kitchen fire. Because of the delay and because of the growth and uncoordinated ventilation, this hallway on the 2nd floor became a blowtorch. The apartment building started to fill, and now you had all those people on those upper floors calling for help. Daryl Gordon gets there, I believe, on the third alarm. His crew is sent up now because the people on the upper floors who weren't affected are now being affected. He goes up, falls down that shaft that they marked. He didn't see, but they didn't report on the radio. Gordon had no idea. Fell 5 stories in the shaft and died. If you read the internal report, one of the other things that the engine said, they said, this is a Cincinnati Fire Department. We don't throw water on smoke. No one could make it down this hallway because nobody thought to flow water. They were trying to push into this apartment. 6 minutes. Delay. 20 minutes. It only took them 6 to knock it down, but a delay in 20 minutes meant this brother's demise. If you have a delay in attack, you got to consider what the consequences are going to be. And you can't get lost in that fog and just keep pushing bodies and pushing the tactics, and you're not getting water on the fire, or you can't find the fire. First point of size up. When I teach size up, first point of size up, you got to find a fire. Talked about Mayday, lack of preparation. Collapse zone discipline and awareness. Another excellent report. Now, how many of you have been to a commercial building fire in the last, I don't know, 2-3 years? How many have you been to? Couple? I mean a commercial building fire. You need collapse zones. You may not have collapse zones on a residential dwelling. I can't remember the last time we had a dwelling ripping top to bottom that we had to set up collapse zones. You set up collapse zones on commercial buildings. It's discipline and awareness. Plus, another thing is, if you're a command officer and you're watching this, you have to be very cautious on who you put in as your sector officers. And you can't just put, another way we get lost is that we check the boxes. We go, oh, I'm going to put a guy on the C side, and I'm going to put a guy on the B side and the D side, and I'm going to be okay because that's what it says to do. If you're a lieutenant or a captain or a company officer watching this, you, day in and day out, whether it's part-time, full-time, whatever, are probably in charge of an engine company doing reports on EMS calls and making sure there's toilet paper in your firehouse. You are not used to being a sector officer in charge of mutual aid companies, collapse zones, and all that. If you're going to set up collapse zones and you're a command officer watching this, or a chief, or you're going to push some change, I'm not cutting and criticizing company officers, but they are not every day doing the same thing a command officer is, looking at the big picture. And so these have to be filled by command level officers who can look and do and focus on the big picture. Kansas City, Missouri. Two firefighters lost their lives in a collapse of a ordinary constructed building. Let me see if I can see if you Google these names or the Kansas City, Missouri, lots of information. Again, I can send you all the information. Lots of good audio that you can learn from. But the bottom line was this: large taxpayer, commercial first floor, residence above. You want the internal report again. The NIOSH one's pretty good, but there's an internal one. But anyway, you had a building right here, right? You have an alley. If you're going to set up a collapse zone, you can't have people in this alley. And if you do, where are they going to run to? Again, I'm not being critical. You learn from the lessons. And so this site collapsed, injured 13, 14 firemen and killed 2. And they even said, we're going to set up a collapse zone. And they didn't really truly adhere to it.
Command, go ahead.
Hey, give me emergency tones. I'm going to move everybody back. We're going to create a collapse zone.
Copy.
Go ahead. Yeah, this is going to be long fire back close. Dispatcher, command, we had a collapse on B side. Collapse on the B side. Emergency no.
Fire the Mayday, we had a collapse.
Now, one of the things that took place here is command did the right thing. He set up collapse zones. But those sector bosses still, especially, well, obviously on that D side, allowed people to come and go in that alley. They had a pumper in that alley back in here, not quite in the alley, but would be on the C, D side that they were worried about protecting. And so they had a couple hand lines off. But the bottom line is they had nowhere to go, nowhere to run to. You have to adhere to collapse zones. If you don't set them up every day, none of us do. When you do, you got to adhere to them. There shouldn't be any hand lines being flown when you're in collapse zones. Absolutely not. Your big streams only. No hand lines. Shut them down. That should be a rule. Okay. I gave you a lot, and I'm going to go back real quick. Jordan, do you have anybody have any questions or anything?
No, I do not. Biggest thing when we do these webinars, they're kind of an abbreviated version of the classes, guys and gals. So if you have the opportunity to see this in person, which the chief and I just talked about how training might be here in the future, who knows?
Right.
If you have the opportunity to take the full course, I highly recommend it on anybody who's been on the webinars, not just through myself or, anybody that's in the teaching world. Make sure you're getting their full version, because you do miss a little bit when you do these online.
If anybody have any questions or any thoughts, if you want anything, if you want to do an online type of deal with your fire department, we can do in-depth on these line of duty reports, or if Jordan wants to do a line of duty death report in depth sometime again, certainly would welcome that. But get a hold of me. But again, move fast. We try to cover a lot in a little bit of time. But again, as we close, I want you to look back at these. Take a snapshot, write them down, whatever. Think about these and think about your fires and what has happened in your area. And again, they're common errors from the fog that can catch you. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Again, it covered a lot. Jordan, I want to thank you. And if you guys want me back, throw it out, shout it out to Jordan. Send me an email. Again, we can set something up in your own department, but do something. And there's a lot of different things that we can do and to further research these events and apply them to your department. So with that, I want to thank you.
Chief, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. It was a beautiful night, but doing this really helps.
All right. I hope it just isn't you and me in the end of this. I hope there was some people hanging on.
I think we still have 46 people. So
wow, that means only board 31. Cool or so. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
For everybody else that's hanging on for a second, I want to thank Schwartz Contracting for sponsoring this. We will. This was recorded. And then I'm going to give this to Schwartz. And what they're doing is they're going to call it Schwartz University. And basically what it'll be is basically like a YouTube bank of all fire related content. And then they'll give access to it. It'll kind of be like you create an account type deal, and all that content will be on there for later use. They're in the process of putting all that together. So it'll be a pretty good resource. And Schwartz Contracting, every was that March timeframe, they do a yearly seminar. They bring in speakers into our area as well. So they're very supportive of the fire service in Lima, Allen County and surrounding area. So Schwartz is a big asset to us. So I want to thank them for helping put this on as well. Any questions, comments, concerns for tonight?
All right. For those that hung on, thank you.
Yep. All right. Everybody have a good night.